You look in a mirror probably 20 times a day, and you don't think about it once. Brushing your teeth, walking past a window, checking your camera before a call. You know exactly what your own face looks like, down to the pore. So here's a question you've genuinely never asked yourself. How did the first humans know what they looked like? Not roughly. Not a vague impression. I mean, actually know, the way you know right now. And the answer is stranger than you'd think, because for most of human history, they didn't. For somewhere north of 100,000 years, human beings walked this earth without ever once seeing their own face clearly. Not their mother's face, not their child's, their own. You'd recognize your best friend's face faster than most ancient humans could describe their own. Let that sit for a second, because this isn't really a story about glass and polished metal. It's a story about what happens to a species that spends 100,000 years being a total mystery to itself. The first answer wasn't invented, it was stumbled into, and it was water. A puddle, a still lake at dawn before the wind picked up and broke the surface apart. Crouch at the right angle in the right light, and the water hands you back a version of your face. A bad version, wavering, dark. Backwards, though nobody alive had any way to know that. Ripple it once, and the whole thing falls apart. But it was enough to plant something dangerous in the human mind, the idea that a face could be looked at, studied, judged. Picture the actual moment. Someone kneeling at a riverbank to drink, freezing halfway down, not because of the water, because of what's staring back out of it. There's a theory some anthropologists take seriously that this exact moment, a human catching their own reflection by accident, might be one of the oldest sources of myth we have. Stories about doubles, spirits living just under the surface, a second self trapped in the water, watching you back. You don't get startled by a stranger's face showing up in a puddle. You only get startled by your own. The oldest actual mirrors we've found are polished obsidian, volcanic glass. Ground down by hand until it holds a dim reflection, and they show up at sites in what's now Turkey, dating back around 8,000 years. Think about what that actually required. Somebody sat there for hours, maybe days, grinding a black stone, not to make a tool, not to make a weapon, just to see themselves. That's not a practical invention. That's an emotional one. Whoever made the first obsidian mirror wasn't solving a problem you'd call urgent. They were answering a question every human has, whether they say it out loud or not. Who am I, when nobody's describing me back to me? And once that question existed, it didn't go away. It just kept demanding better answers. Polished copper shows up in Egypt and Mesopotamia, then bronze. Then, around the 1st century, glass backed with a thin layer of metal starts appearing in the Roman world, and each version is clearer than the last, and each one is still, by our standards, genuinely bad. Here's the part that usually gets left out of this story, though. For nearly all of that time, an actual clear reflection was a luxury item. A farmer in Bronze Age Egypt might go his whole life catching distorted glimpses of himself in a bowl of water left out overnight, while a noble a few miles away owns a polished bronze disc kept in a case and can study his own face literally whenever he wants. That's a strange kind of inequality to sit with. Not access to food or land or safety. Access to yourself. And it raises a real question. If you don't have reliable access to your own face, how do you build a sense of who you are? Do you end up relying more on how people treat you, what they tell you look like? In a world without accurate mirrors, other people's descriptions of you might have carried more weight than your own eyes ever could. The actual turning point comes in the 12 and 1300s in Venice. Glassmakers on the island of Murano worked out a technique using glass backed with a tin and mercury amalgam, and for the first time in human history, a mirror could show a face that was sharp, detailed, close to what we'd consider accurate today. Venice guarded that technique so aggressively that glassmakers caught trying to leave the city with the secret could face execution. Sit with that for a second. Not a comfort item, not a household good, a state secret worth killing over. That's how dangerous an accurate reflection was considered. And once that mirror spread across Europe, something shifted that had nothing to do with glass at all. Self-portraiture, a genre that barely existed before, explodes. Fashion accelerates because for the first time, people can actually check how they look before anyone else does. And historians will tell you this is roughly when a distinctly modern sense of individual identity starts taking shape in Western thought. The idea that you are a specific, observable self, separate from your family, your role, your position in whatever hierarchy you were born into. That's not a coincidence. You cannot fully separate the idea of who am I from the actual physical ability to look at who you are. The mirror didn't just reflect faces, it helped invent the modern idea of the individual. Now, here's where it gets uncomfortable, because that same 100,000-year-old hunger, the one that made someone grind volcanic glass by hand just to see their own eyes, never actually went anywhere. It just got a much, much better mirror. Your phone's front camera is the most accurate, most instantly available reflection in the history of our species. You can check your own face more times in a single afternoon than a medieval king could in his entire lifetime. And yet, filters exist. Angles get practiced in front of a bathroom mirror before anyone else sees them. Entire industries exist purely to correct what that camera shows you. The Venetian glassmakers thought they'd solved the problem the moment they made the reflection accurate. They hadn't, because the real question was never what do I actually look like. It was always is what I look like enough. And that question was open in a puddle 100,000 years ago, and it's still open right now, in your pocket, the next time you check your own face before you send a photo.